we have talked before about the conscience as what the Greeks would have called a suneidesis, and which comes into Latin as conscius, right? Knowing alongside, right? And this idea that you have within yourself something that can see yourself goes right back to Aristotle, who says, we see things with our eyes, but we also perceive that we see, right? We're self-aware in this way. And that consciousness either goes on back into infinity, right? It's either an infinite regress, or there is something that both knows and knows that it is knowing, right? And this is self-awareness. This is suneidesis. This is consciousness. And that's why consciousness and conscience are so close together. Of course, there's also a diseased version of this, and that's what Daryl is talking about in his show, is that, for Dostoevsky and indeed for Nietzsche, and this is something that, of course, Freud also gets into in some detail, right? That sense of being divided or split against oneself was terribly painful, and could spiral into a crippling kind of self-awareness or self-criticism or indeed anguish, right? And it's interesting to watch how Nietzsche translated this into a form of philosophy and eventually into madness, right? Because Nietzsche would discover Dostoevsky not long before he went mad, which, again, we will talk about later on down the line. But Dostoevsky translated this, I think, in many ways productively into his literature, into his writing. And so in Brothers Karamazov, one thing to understand, and one reason why I'm spending so much time on Dostoevsky's, feelings about his father and about his literary life and the kind of internal conflicts that he's dealing with. Did I actually want my father to die, right, in the way that sort of Freud suggests? Did I, in fact, want to be a part of the upper crust, or did I, want to be a man of the people, right? These internal tensions are beautifully kind of brought to light in the various characters, the various brothers of Brothers K, right? I mean, it's too reductive to say that each one of them represents some part of him. But it's certainly true that each brother has something to say, about, has magnified some part of what Dostoevsky feels about his father and his life and what he's sort of seen in the state of Russia. And so this notion of the head and the heart, right, the battle between him of the head and on the heart, which really is embodied in the novel in the relationship between Ivan and Alyosha or Alexei, right? These two brothers who kind of make the core of the novel. There are two other brothers, one legitimate, one illegitimate. There's Dmitri, and then there's Smerdyakov. But these two, Ivan and Alyosha, at least when it comes to the head and the heart that we were just talking about, right? They kind of represent this battle that was raging in him, but also in his circles, and he, I think, saw in Russia, right? The idea that actually, if you have these grand notions, this sort of highly, super sophisticated intelligence, you can reason your way into any kind of utopia and out of the things that the heart knows. And it's the heart, right, which discerns and perceives the moral realities, which make things like utopianism and socialism actually impossible, right? That the things that, if you cut the mind off from the heart, it will create something that looks like utopia, but is actually a nightmare. And the only way to know that it's a nightmare is to reassert the primacy of those heart truths, right? Of the moral universe. And we talked about that a little bit too in Raskolnikov, whose name, by the way, Daryl points out, right, is a pun on the word for division, right? So this idea is obviously alive in Dostoevsky's mind as well, that Russia is in a battle, he is in a battle, and in some ways the modern West is in a battle between the head and the heart that need to find some form of reconciliation. If there's going to be salvation of the Western soul, there needs to be a reconciliation between the Western mind and the Western heart. And for Dostoevsky, it has to be the heart that takes the lead, because the heart has been kind of denied and talked down to and dismissed as sort of secondary or unimportant. And actually what it is it's a conduit for us to the most important truths, the things without which the mind cannot possibly reason.